Hi, it's Willow here, and today I'm here to do a video that is actually a testimonial about the cell tower injuries that I have received since the 5G rollout began in late 2019. Okay, and the reason I don't really care to discuss my personal health matters and personal life, but we are actually in an emergency situation on planet Earth because a truly insane and toxic and deadly wireless radiation rollout has been occurring, and there have been millions of new cell towers, 5G cell towers, 5G base stations on the sides and roofs of buildings, and 5G small antennae that are called repeaters being put on light posts. So especially our urban environments, even our small towns, I'll touch on that later, our urban environments are becoming basically wireless radiation hotboxes. So radiation hotboxes that will not support healthy biological life over time. Okay. Now, we've known for 30 or 40 years that living and working and spending recreation time around cell towers is terribly dangerous. It causes people to get sick. It dramatically increases your chance of getting a cancer diagnosis. It dramatically increases your risk of radiation sickness, radiation poisoning, which has a range of debilitating symptoms associated with it. So we've known all this for 30 or 40 years, and there are more than 10,000 peer-reviewed studies showing that wireless radiation has biological effects even at low doses, even at doses that the government and the telecommunications industry insist are safe. So they are ignoring this mountain of science, and they are also, and I think this is the more important thing, they're ignoring tens of millions at least of electromagnetically hypersensitive people around the world who are screaming at them that these towers are making us sick. Okay? These devices are making us sick. These high radiation zones are making us sick. Okay? And again, electromagnetically hypersensitive people have been raising the red flag on this for 30 or 40 years now, and instead of being heeded, they've been completely dismissed, ignored, mocked, attacked. Okay, called tinfoil hat wearers. You know the drill, right? So people who are basically canaries in the coal mine, who are illustrating the toxicity of our environments with these cell towers being put in residential areas, in business areas, in schoolyards, base stations being put on senior citizens' homes, daycares have cell towers in their yards. Just truly insane when you understand how toxic and deadly this stuff really is. And oh boy, I understand it. So I understood this even before I became an electromagnetically hypersensitive person myself. But since 2019, like I said, since December 2019, I have to include myself in the ranks of the electromagnetically hypersensitive who are made ill, and ill to a debilitating degree, by wireless radiation exposures. Okay, so I've been campaigning against 5G and trying to do a lot of public education work. I've lobbied 2 city councils. I've done delegations for 2 city councils in 2 different provinces that I've lived in. And unfortunately, the insanity just seems to continue. Okay, so I'll just say that I have written this zine, Cell Tower and 5G Wireless Dangers. Please oppose residential cell tower installations and the 5G wireless rollout in your community. It's chock full of information. So it's written for the city that I'm currently in, which is Regina, Saskatchewan, but it's actually applicable to anyone. There are multiple studies, multiple links, basically proving the danger and toxicity of what's going on right now. Okay. I also have that document as a PDF file. I have it posted on my blog and my website. And I also did a video to let people know that if you want to make this zine or some other zine opposing the 5G rollout, I can assist you to do that. So, okay, now that's the kind of broad overview. So as I say, since late 2019, 5G has been live around the world, okay, and different countries are more advanced than others, but I think it bears repeating that Wuhan, China was the very first smart city, and their 5G tower, they had, I believe, definitely hundreds of new 5G towers within Wuhan, China, and within a couple months of those towers being live, of course, we start seeing the illness outbreak in that area. Okay, I will also say that from personal experience as well as extensive research, I know that the symptoms of radiation sickness are very similar to what is being called COVID. Okay, just throwing a few little facts out there. So I'm not a person who thinks that wireless radiation is the only thing that's making people ill right now, but I definitely think it is the biggest thing that is being absolutely ignored on most fronts. Okay, absolutely ignored, which is mind-boggling. But okay, so just a little bit of a quick background. Like I say, I'm an anti-5G campaigner. I've been doing this work since early 2020. I've written extensive articles. Like I say, I wrote a zine. I've created documents to present to city councils. I've verbally presented this to city councils. I've connected with other electromagnetically hypersensitive people. So I'm not a chump in this area. Okay. I also have a journalism background. So I do have specialized research skills. Just putting that out there. So electromagnetic hypersensitivity, so i.e. what that is that wireless radiation makes you ill, okay? Especially cell towers, but certainly also base stations, the repeaters, areas with a lot of wireless devices. AirPods are terrible. AirPods I don't think should be on the market, period. They are tremendously dangerous, okay? Just gonna throw that out there. So there haven't been very many studies done on electromagnetically hypersensitive people. Big surprise there, right? Because of course the telecom industries and the government don't want our voices out there to be heard, right? They just want to push the fast download speeds, and I don't know, that's the only selling feature I've really seen. Oh, self-driving cars. Yeah, if you're loony enough to want self-driving cars, then yeah, you're willing to fry people to death for that purpose, I suppose. But there have been studies done, because again, especially since the 5G rollout has involved so many additional cell towers being introduced and so many additional antennae being introduced into our environments. Electromagnetic hypersensitivity is on the rise worldwide, and there will be more and more people experiencing illness around wireless radiation. So the studies that have been done range as far as what percentage of people experience ill effects from wireless exposure, but a conservative estimate would be about 5% of the world's population. So that is not an insubstantial number of people, okay? And it could be as high as 13, 14, 15% of the population. And the problem is that because we have not been educated on the true dangers and the true toxicity of wireless radiation and wireless devices, but in particular 5G radiation, which is many times more intense and more toxic, I've come to learn, than previous technologies, 4G, 3G, etc. People just don't know that what's making them ill is cell towers or wireless radiation exposure, okay? So yes, this is something that affects, as I say, at the very least, tens of millions of people all over the world. 5%, I live in Canada, which let's say has about 40 million people, right? Well, 5% of 40 million people is, not an insubstantial amount of people. So this is, yes, again, tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions of people around the world experiencing electromagnetic hypersensitivity. So my crash course into just how dangerous and just how potentially deadly these 5G towers are, has happened since I moved temporarily back into a city. And like I say, I moved temporarily to Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. And Regina is, it has around 200,000 people. I think a little bit more now, but it's around about 200,000 people. So it's a small city, but we have more than 100 cell towers and base stations in this small city, and dozens and dozens and dozens of 5G towers have been introduced in, the past, 5G towers and antenna, okay, so and base stations and that type of thing have been introduced just in the past handful of years, right? Just since sort of like 2019. So up until, like I say, the first cell tower the first wireless radiation injury I had was in December 2019, and I was working at a college in British Columbia at the time, invigilating exams, and it was a longer stint of work than I was used to. And where the invigilator's desk was right in the middle of about 200 backpacks. So the students all left their backpacks right around where I was sitting. So of course, probably every one of those backpacks had a smartphone in it, possibly had a set of AirPods in it, I don't know. But basically what ended up happening was I noticed that as this stint of work went on, my energy was drained completely. Like it was almost like the feeling of like a battery just being drained. I caught a cold, and then a couple days after I ended this stint, I had the worst candida flare of my life, and there was no reason why I was having this flare. I couldn't understand why I was having this flare. So I do long story short, I do intensive research, and I find out that wireless radiation exposure makes things like mold and yeast grow more abundantly and more virulently. Okay, so it makes mold more toxic, and it makes yeast more toxic as well. So that was basically the lightning bolt moment to realize that I had been injured by spending all that time by those cell phones. Okay, so I started being very, very careful. I got rid of all wireless. I used Ethernet connections. I spent hundreds of dollars on EMF protection products, which definitely help with ambient wireless radiation. I will say that the products that I use, I'm not saying they're a 100% fix, but they definitely help. If you've already gotten rid of wireless in your home, or even if you do have a wireless router, it will certainly take the edge off of it. Okay. So I've done previous videos on that. I won't do any more there. But okay, so fast forward to February 2023. So February of last year, exactly 1 year ago. Again, I was in this fairly new to this city, and I spent a bunch of time downtown. There was a winter festival going on, which is called Frost Fest. And I was downtown, I want to say, for about 3 or 4 hours. I wasn't outside the whole time. I was out shopping at the mall, whatever, but I was in the downtown core for about 3 or 4 hours. And I took the bus home, and again, I noticed that my energy level was just flatlined, like beyond what it should have been for just, spelunking around downtown and going shopping for a few hours, right? So I just thought, wow, that something's, really not right. This isn't feeling great. And within, a short time afterwards, I came down with what I thought was the flu. And it had very similar flu symptoms. So I was incredibly nauseated, okay? I had no appetite, felt very nauseated. I felt, I had hot and cold flashes. So I was like, basically like just sweating 1 minute, freezing cold the next minute, sweating 1 minute, freezing, you know how it is, hot and cold flashes. I was exhausted, okay? I was exhausted. And massive headache came on. Okay. So again, like I say, I thought, okay, well, I have the flu. I'll just stay home. I'll just take care of myself, and everything will be okay. So after about 3 days, the flu symptoms kind of started to subside. I wasn't having the hot and cold flashes as much. I wasn't as exhausted. The headache started abating a little bit, but then it turned into a respiratory illness. and I started, having like my lungs kind of filling, coughing, nose running like a tap. So all these symptoms of a cold now. So I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. The flu just, transformed into a cold. That's really weird. And so that cold lasted about 3 weeks. Like it was a long-term cold. So one other weird thing that I noticed was that my hands and feet were tingling. And that has been, I do realize now that is a symptom of radiation poisoning or too much wireless exposure. But once I was feeling better, I went over to my mother's house and I noticed that I had almost no tolerance to her smartphone at all. So normally I can be around a smartphone for maybe 20 or 30 seconds while it's engaged and I don't have any problems. But at that point, I had no tolerance for her phone. Even her big screen TV was bothering me. And I thought, wow, like what's going on? Why am I this sensitive to wireless now? Like I know I have sensitivity, but it's not usually this bad, right? So anyway, during this time, again, I'm researching online and I realized that without my knowing it, they had already done the 5G rollout in that downtown core, and there were about a dozen 5G installations in that downtown core, as well as a massive cell tower on top of the Saskatchewan building downtown. Okay, so like EMF hotbox to the extreme is basically what the downtown core is right now, unfortunately. And because I wasn't aware of this, right? I had my EMF protection with me that day, naively and everything, because I was not aware of how many 5G, I wasn't aware that we were being bombarded with 5G frequencies to begin with, and I was well aware that they were many times more toxic than 4G frequencies, okay? And I had no idea that there were about a dozen installations in just, like a kind of a 4-block by 4-block radius, in addition to that massive tower on top of the Saskatchewan building. So, needless to say, this was my crash course in just how toxic 5G towers are, okay? And also that, again, the symptoms of radiation poisoning, which is what I actually had, are very similar to what people would call flu, cold, COVID, okay? So, yeah, just gonna put that on the record. Okay, so this experience actually was terrifying for me because it made me realize that there are entire areas of this city that are too toxic for me to be in. Okay? And the thing about electromagnetic hypersensitivity is that your body reaches a threshold, okay? So you can be exposed to certain levels of radiation for quite a long time without showing symptoms or with only having mild symptoms that you might not even associate with wireless radiation. But at a certain point, your body reaches the point of no return, that threshold point, and then any additional exposure is going to kick up symptoms, okay? So people don't necessarily start off electromagnetically hypersensitive. I didn't. But because we are just absolutely being inundated with this toxic radiation, and they're making it very difficult to avoid, if not impossible, to avoid exposure, right? This is all involuntary exposure for a lot of people, myself included. It's terrifying, okay? So I became one of those people, right, that I had only seen on documentaries or that I had only talked to, always thought, oh, those poor people. I'm now one of those people that is relegated to staying, in certain areas of the city because most of the areas of the city, and especially kind of the places where people congregate, are too toxic for me to be in. Okay, so that happened in February 2023. Like I said, it took about a month for me to get over the illness. Then I had to wrap my head around the fact that I'm electromagnetically hypersensitive and the 5G rollout is poisonous, if not deadly, to me. I started doing research into small towns. Well, lo and behold, most small towns also have a 5G tower in them now, as well. They're not holding this on, sticking with this just in the cities, right? There are definitely major roadways that are lined with cell towers, so you are getting constant exposure. So dramatically complicates life, to say the least, right? Okay, so I was laying low. I was laying low right until the beginning of May 2023. And then my mom was going to go and run some errands. And I thought, okay, I haven't been out of the house. I've literally been getting over this sickness, and I've been, scared to leave the house. So, you know what? I'm going to go with her to run errands. And, this was before the point where I'm checking the cell tower map every single time before I go out of the house. I do that now. I unfortunately didn't know to do that last year. So I go and run errands innocently with my mom in an area of the city called Rosemont, okay? And and there was, my mom wanted to wash her car because her car was a bit grubby, and there was a Shell station there at Rosemont. So I'm like, okay, well, you know what, let's just quickly run your car through the car wash, which was a manual car wash, like you had to get out. So we drive over to the Shell, and the car wash is on the back of the Shell, and I immediately have a splitting headache. My vision started deteriorating. I was having a hard time speaking. I was having a hard time finding words. And I was just, and this all happened in a matter of about 30 seconds. I never left the vehicle, and like I say, I was carrying my EMF protection with me because I always carry that stuff with me, and it was like nothing. Like it was like I didn't have any EMF protection because the radiation was that intense. So I look up, and lo and behold, there's a cell tower right there. But it's not like right on top of me, so I'm really honestly shocked, because in less than 30 seconds, I'm having massive reaction, right? Like splitting headache, can't see properly, can't speak properly. Like these are serious effects. So I say to my mom, oh my God, I'm getting fried by that cell tower. We got to drive out of here. So she instantly drives out of there. But those symptoms lasted for hours afterwards. Okay? So 30 seconds of exposure of a 5G tower, and yes, it was one of the newer towers, so it was a 5G tower, okay? And again, downtown, I was able to spend like 3 or 4 hours, so I think just because of the intensity of the radiation, the size of the cell tower, whether you're in a hot zone or not, because there's kind of a hot zone around these cell towers where the radiation is worst. And then if you get out of that hot zone, it's a little bit better, right? So I think I just got into a hot zone at the Shell car wash, Rosemont neighborhood, Regina, Saskatchewan, just giving you guys a heads up here. So anyway, we went home, and like I say, the headache and the problem speaking and the vision issues lasted for hours and hours afterwards. Basically what happened was I eventually fell asleep on the couch for 3.5 hours solid. So again, I was just like drained of energy. Fell asleep for 3.5 hours, got up, went to bed, slept the whole night through. So basically slept about 12 hours straight, to kind of sleep this stuff off. So by the next day I was feeling a little bit better, and I thought, oh my goodness, okay, thank goodness I'm not going to get I'm not going to get full-on radiation sickness from this. It was a small enough dose. But lo and behold, in the following days, I notice, oh, why do I have so much hair all over the floor all the time? Like, why am I sitting on the couch and there's like multiple hairs on the back of the couch when I leave? That's weird. So just started thinking, bizarre. Then I get into the shower, and again, this is maybe 4 or 5 days after this happened. I don't know exact timelines, but washing my hair, and whole handfuls of hair. I mean, not big handfuls, but I mean probably 3 or 4 times as much hair as normally comes out is coming out into my hands, and I'm thinking, whoa, okay, that's not normal. That's not good. So I realized that, of course, hair loss is a result of radiation exposure. And so now my hair is falling out. Yay, on top of it. Rah, rah. And so I had, just through my activist efforts and through networking with other activists, I had learned of 2 men who used to go around and regularly take radiation readings around the cell towers, like just to kind of monitor what was going on. Both those men had to stop doing that because their hair started falling out. And it was because of the radiation exposure, right? Okay, and I will also just talk about one other time when I had a near immediate bad reaction to cell tower radiation. This also happened in Regina, Saskatchewan. So I was riding the public bus, the city bus, which unfortunately has become very potentially dangerous. Okay, because there are so many people with, number one, smartphones, but number two, AirPods. And AirPods are tremendously dangerous. I will get a splitting headache, even walking past a person who's using AirPods. Okay, so literally, they produce so much radiation all around that person that just walking past them for 5 seconds will start to cause a headache and will start to cause pressure in my ears. Okay, that's a sign. Those are two signs of, and I'll actually go down a list of signs of radiation sickness, radiation poisoning, symptoms of that at the end of the video. But okay, so I was riding the city bus. I was taking a. This was actually before the two major injuries. Okay, but I just want to mention this because it caused different symptoms that people should also be aware of. So I was the city bus driver decided to park in front of the 7-Eleven and take like a little 5-minute break. So he parked the bus right in front of the 7-Eleven. He opened the door and he left the bus, and I immediately felt immense pressure on my chest. I was having a hard time breathing, and I noticed that my heart was a little bit fluttery. I was like, oh, and I was getting a little bit lightheaded, getting a little bit dizzy, and I thought, and I again came to mind, like, are there any cell towers in the area? I look over, we're parked basically right under a cell tower, and the bus door is open, so we're getting flooded with radiation. So again, that was like 5 minutes of exposure, and I was having heart and lung issues. That time, luckily, we must have been far enough away from the tower when he drove away. I didn't have any residual effects. But basically, you can have, what I've learned, okay, is that different towers are more toxic than others. It's the new towers, the 5G towers, and the 5G equipped towers that are particularly deadly and just, will pretty well drop you if you don't get out of there fast enough, right? And again, there's I don't know if it's the different frequencies that are being used. I'm not exactly sure, but there are certain towers that I will start having like an injury develop within 30 seconds or even less than 30 seconds of exposure. Okay, so this is very different from the old school towers, which yes, I would avoid, but certainly they would not injure me within that short of a period of time. Okay, so what they're introducing is certainly more toxic. The radiation is more toxic. The frequencies are more intense, and it is just more detrimental than previous generations. Okay, so I'm going to finish this video off. I was trying to make it 30 minutes, and we're pretty close. With radiation poisoning or radiation sickness symptoms. Okay, so what this means is that if you are having some of these symptoms, one of the things you have to look at is your radiation exposure. Okay, so that could be full-on cell towers. It could be base stations, which are antennae on the sides and roofs of buildings. Okay, it could be right now, again, unfortunately, in most major cities, the downtown core is absolutely saturated because they have 5G repeaters on kind of like 2 per city block on the light posts. So an electromagnetically hypersensitive person cannot survive, for example, in Calgary, Alberta's downtown. Okay, I lived in Calgary for 6 years. My family lives there. I can't go there. Okay, it's off limits to me because there is so much 5G radiation in that downtown. And this is kind of, again, this is like a globalized blueprint. So this is their dream dystopia for every city on this planet, okay, is to create an urban environment that is so toxic with radiation and various other things that it will not support healthy biological life over time. Okay, so if you are having any of these symptoms, Oh, and also, like I say, just being around a lot of wireless devices, and in particular AirPods, okay? That's enough. If you're sensitive, that can cause illness and pain and issues, okay? So if you're having any of these symptoms, you need to look at your wireless exposure. Okay, headache, okay? And that's like headache that can come on, again, it can come on like really quickly, or it can come on in a delayed fashion, okay? Pressure in the ears or pressure in the head, ringing in the ears, so tinnitus, worsened tinnitus, vision changes, okay? So just anything going on with your vision. I experience vision deterioration, so it's just like I'm not seeing as well as I should be. Exhaustion and fatigue, that's huge. Again, you almost feel like your battery's just been drained, right? And general weakness, just kind of feeling weak, okay? Cognitive problems, so trouble speaking, trouble finding words, trouble with thoughts, dizziness, that's a big one too. That's a really common one that you'll experience. Heart palpitations or any changes in your heart rhythm. These 5G frequencies can certainly cause that instantly, okay? Trouble breathing and pressure in the chest. It's well documented that radiation exposure can cause pneumonia. Radiation exposure can cause lung fibrosis. So these are all like respiratory effects from wireless radiation. And yep, you bet your sweet bippy, that's very possible. I've experienced it multiple times. Tingling in the hands or feet, or I think some people's extremities in general, just their legs might tingle, their arms might tingle. Nausea, lack of appetite, hot and cold flashes, again, temperature regulation issues, hair loss, intolerance to wireless devices. So things that weren't bothering you before, all of a sudden, again, you hit your threshold, things are bothering you. Immune system suppression. So if you are catching every cold, every flu, everything, right? Wireless radiation exposure can suppress your immune system and make it not function properly. Neuropsychiatric effects, and this is huge because we have a mental health epidemic going on, especially in young people, and these young people are being experimented on. I mean, there's no two ways about it. So the social media generations are experiencing a type of life that no human being in human history has experienced, as far as constant exposure to wireless, constant immersion in social media, smartphone world, virtual reality, right? This is all experimental stuff and hugely toxic. So wireless radiation itself, right, like social media and kind of like the cult of image has obviously detrimental neuropsychiatric effects on people. Like it's a fake world that makes people feel bad, basically, right? A lot of it is. But wireless radiation alone can actually cause things like anxiety, depression, insomnia, brain fog, that's a big one, mood swings, and especially anger. I think anger and sadness, just kind of feeling you're on an emotional roller coaster. Nosebleeds, okay, and I've actually heard also some people bleed from the ears, nightmarish stuff, and just in general flu-like symptoms, okay? So these are all, and that's not even a full list, okay? That's just kind of like a basic kind of laundry list of what radiation exposure will cause in people, and especially if you have some degree of electromagnetic hypersensitivity. So as I say, I'm a voice of an electromagnetically hypersensitive person who has already been injured multiple times, who has already been made ill multiple times from cell tower exposures, including very short cell tower exposures of under 30 seconds. Okay, that's how deadly this stuff really can be. I am a firm believer that this stuff could drop people in the streets. Okay, and I think is. Okay, I think has been and is doing that. It's not, I'm not smiling because it's funny. I'm smiling because it's black humor. We're doing our best here, right? So the idea is that, again, electromagnetically hypersensitive people are just canaries in the coal mine. So we have immediate ill effects from radiation, But basically everyone is being exposed to that toxic radiation, okay? It might take longer for symptoms to show up in you. It might take 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, okay? But that there are biological effects happening. There are changes in your body happening related to exposure. And wireless radiation, like I say, in those 10,000 plus peer-reviewed studies, we see a dramatic increase in cancer, infertility, again, neuropsychiatric problems. It causes oxidative stress in the body. It causes DNA breaks in the body. It's very inflammatory to the body. There are literally, I mean, any system in your body can basically be harmed by wireless radiation exposure. And no one really knows what the safe limit is, because the limits that they're telling us are safe are astronomically higher than what people should be exposed to, okay? Again, these studies are showing that even at low levels of radiation exposure, harmful effects are happening. So the telecommunications industry and the government are completely ignoring all those studies, all those electromagnetically hypersensitive people who are already getting sick, okay? We also have multiple studies now showing that people who lived by a base station were actually okay when it was a 4G base station. Once they add the 5G antenna, then people start experiencing radiation sickness in that home. And I mean, that's terrifying, because you actually have to physically leave that home in order to not have those symptoms of radiation sickness. We also have a recent study of people on vacation, because yes, with the extreme demand for wireless and cellular service, they are putting 5G towers even in national parks, in recreation areas, in nature areas. So again, like I say, they are making it extremely difficult to avoid this. And they're also creating kind of like, we're kind of like shut out of society in many ways, because, we can't go into these areas anymore. But yes, the vacation, there was a family that had been on vacation in a certain area and had no problems. And then all of a sudden they put up a 5G tower in that area. They went on vacation and the whole family got ill from the radiation exposure. And again, the symptoms didn't abate until they left that place. So I am just one of tens of millions of people around the world who are trying to raise this emergency flag that this is insane. This 5G rollout's insane. These addictions to wireless devices are hugely detrimental, not only for physical health, but also for the health of our society, the health of our relationships, the health of communication and interaction and connection and all these things, right? So this is truly crazy. Okay, there's no other word for it, to steamroll forward with this insanity while they're hurting and harming and poisoning so many people. And unfortunately, there's such a huge backlash because people are so very, very ignorant, and they're so very, very arrogant about their ignorance. So if you are an electromagnetically hypersensitive person and you're trying to talk about these issues, yes, you'll be shouted down, laughed at, ridiculed. You'll get the little laughing emoji from these idiots. Like, sorry to say, but they are. I mean, I know they're just ignorant, but you don't have to act like an idiot if you're ignorant, but they do. So a lot of people don't want to speak out about this, right? Because luckily for me, I've been exposing the corrupt bastards type of force since I was a teenager. So, I mean, I'm used to it to a degree. But this level, there needs to be a rapid and immense amount of public education done on this topic, because I mean, people are sending their kids to schoolyards that have a 5G tower right on the schoolyard. They're sending their kids to daycares that have a 5G tower. They're going to libraries that have a 5G tower. They're hanging out downtown in downtowns that are chock full of radiation. And I've actually taken my RF meter downtown. Now, I just have one of the entry-level models, so it doesn't give me specific numbers. but the radiation downtown it's in the 10, it's over 10,000 microwatts per meter squared. So it's definitely over 10 times the safe limit. And I'm not sure exactly where those numbers peak out, but in no way is it healthy. In no way is it safe. People will certainly be experiencing illness without knowing what's even making them sick, right? This is happening all over the world. I just had a woman comment on my blog who had just had a very similar experience of having serious symptoms when she was around a cell tower in New Zealand. This is happening all over the world, okay? This is a global scheme, global scam. And of course, it is also tied to surveillance and the rise of artificial intelligence and automating all of our jobs and never being able to. You think it's hard to speak to a human being now? Well, just wait till everything's being done by artificial intelligence. I mean, it's a true dystopian nightmare, in the works. So this cell tower injuries testimonial is just to put on the record that Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada is in no way safe to live in, and this especially for electromagnetically hypersensitive people. Cell towers, there should be no antenna or cell towers even in city limits. Okay, we know that even up to 500 meters, if you live, work, or spend recreation time up to 500 meters from a cell tower, you have an increased incidence of cancer. If you live within 400 meters, you have a 3 or 4 times higher chance of getting a cancer diagnosis. And that was at the previous technology level, 4G and 3G, 2G. 5G is like insanely intense, insanely toxic, insanely. I know it from personal experience, as well as just from the whistleblowers. Thank you, whistleblowers, for being on this for the past decade plus. Really appreciate that. We're all building on your foundation now, and we're adding to it, and we're strengthening now, because we literally come to an emergency point on planet Earth, and certainly the sensitives of this planet, that I would include myself among, won't be doing well if this continues, and if we aren't at least allowing sanctuaries, like EMF-free sanctuaries. That's something I am going to be campaigning hard for probably the rest of my life, unfortunately, is that we need places where we can go, that we don't have to be around towers, we don't have to be around devices, we can get away from it so that we can actually stay healthy, over time. And right now, that's not the case for the way that society is being built, okay? The way that society is being socially engineered, top down, okay? So we need an immediate, number one, we need to stop the 5G rollout. We need to reverse it. We need to dismantle everything. And we actually need to get all these, number one, we need to move back to Ethernet cords and corded landlines, and only use wireless devices when they're absolutely needed, instead of having it like it's almost like a third appendage, like people cannot put these things down. That's an addiction, okay? That's not healthy. You're exposing yourself and everyone around you to toxic radiation when you're on those things for 8 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours, whatever. These kids have AirPods in all day long sometimes. I mean, the amount of you can just take an RF meter and test this. The amount of radiation that comes off AirPods is astronomical. It's like having 2 wireless routers right in your ears, okay? So it's like putting 2 wireless routers right up against your brain. Does that sound healthy to y'all? Not to me. So, I grew up in the last generation before social media, before the internet, before cell phones. So I still have a baseline for what healthy human life should look like, what a healthy society should look like. And we are very, very, very far from that right now. And this is only the beginning of what they have planned. What they have planned is with 6G, biological life won't be able to survive it. I'll just tell you that much. And this affects wildlife. It affects our sweet little pets. Okay? Imagine how much radiation your body's getting, and then imagine how much your tiny little pet's body's getting, right? Radiation has effects on water composition, and there's so many places that have these friggin' 5G antenna on their water towers. Oh, you know, it's just next level insanity is what it is, and people are being socially engineered to just go along with it like automatons, right? Oh, gee, wow, fancy. I can download a movie in 17 seconds. I mean, who cares, you guys? We're reaching a level of sociopathy in our societies where people are willing to fry a certain percentage of the population to death, to illness or death, to have more personal convenience for them, faster download speeds. They're happy to put blinders on about all this danger and all these people being made sick, right? Because they're that entitled. You know, I mean, it's next level. And the thing about it is that there's no way to know who's going to become electromagnetically sensitive or not. There's no way to know who's going to get a cancer diagnosis from living by that cell tower and who won't. So it's like playing Russian roulette with your life and with your family's lives. Okay? So yeah, maybe you're fine. You don't notice a darn thing. You could basically sunbathe under a 5G tower for 6 hours and you'd be fine. Great. Well, that's great for you. But do you know that that's going to be the case for your children, for your grandchildren, for your nieces, your nephews, for your parents? Elderly people are going to be more susceptible to this stuff, just like kids are going to be more susceptible to this stuff. So this is a situation that, like, you know, electromagnetically hypersensitive people have been put in a very tough position. And we're, you know, in very many ways, we're sort of on the run because we simply cannot tolerate these towers. And these towers are going in all the time, willy-nilly. They're just throwing them up here and there, putting them on this building, that building. They've taken most of the control is not in the hands of the people on this front. So we have to take that control back and say, absolutely not with this insanity. Absolutely not. Like, you've pushed this craziness as far as you can. You've pushed this scheme as far as you can. Now we get rid of it. And that's really, and I understand people are going to think that that's a pie in the sky idea. I don't want to see what this planet's going to be like in 20, 30, 40 years if we're not able to get through people's heads that this stuff is deadly, because it is. Okay? So anyway, signing off as an electromagnetically hypersensitive person who has been injured multiple times by cell towers in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada, and who is a virulent anti-5G campaigner and anti-5G and beyond campaigner. And I will not back down on this, because this is the future of biological life on planet Earth. That's what this fight is. And if we give up on this fight, like I say, I'm not sure that biological life can even remain healthy and happy on this planet. So high stakes, guys. Stay in the game, please, because we need ya.